Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of True Story Live. We have one for you tonight. This one is A State of Being, Lighthouse. I'm excited about this one for various reasons, which we'll get into as the show goes on. But first, as always, we'll introduce the panel. First, my name is Jason. I'm the host of the broadcast. But of course, I would not do this broadcast without three lovely people that join me every Sunday. Starting with the writer of tonight's write-up, Glenn from Australia, our good friend. And as we've talked about many times, I met him through my mother. They were very close for a long period of time. And when she passed in 2017, Glenn and I reestablished a relationship, which has continued on, and I'm super grateful for him. And so Glenn, take a minute to say hello to the peoples.
Yeah, hi everyone, and I'm sending a shout out to Sandra, who has got out of bed and is at her desk and interested to hear what is said this evening. So
oh wow, hey Sandra.
So it's a celebration.
Oh,
Hi Sandra.
Where's my confetti?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, I need my confetti poppers.
So we
That's
have an
good.
extra listener, so that's just good.
No, that's wonderful. I'm glad Sandra's here. Sandra, we love you, and I'm glad you're listening. And thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Glenn.
Okay.
Also, my amazing wife, Jennifer, who I am also grateful to know every day, more and more each day. Welcome, Jen. Take a minute to say hello to peoples.
Hello, peoples. Good to be here, and I'm super excited that Sandra's here listening. And I'll be waiting with bated breath to see what she thinks after the show and has her chats with Glenn, and if she's laughing at us or cheering us on or what. I'm sure she'll be cheering us on.
That's it. Roll her eyes.
I might be able to feel it from all the way over here in the U.S.
Yeah,
from Australia.
She will give me honest, unabashed feedback.
Yes, that's what I love about her.
I love it. I have said several times that I love people who are direct. You can be direct and not be an asshole, and that's what I prefer. But I would rather, even if someone has to be an asshole, I'd rather they be direct than the just tell you what you want to hear and think something else. I would just rather I'd rather someone to be upfront, authentic, so to speak. It's important. So there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. Well, the gratitude continues on with having our friend Marisa from Ohio and the curator of her own Nez Lover channel. And I try to mention each Sunday. If you haven't had a chance to go by and visit her channel, do yourself a favor and do that. She's an artist and a singer and just an all-around wonderful girl. And also the people that attend her broadcasts are wonderful, in my opinion. So make some friends, and also they support other people's channels. You're able to push your link in there. And just grateful that she's with us. It's the second year now in a row. And we're glad to have her. Thank you, Marisa, for being here. And take a minute to say hello to the peoples, please.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to True Story Live. Hello, Sandra. Yay! I'm glad you're joining us tonight. Keep an eye on that Glenn. Oh, my goodness. I'm looking forward to getting chin deep tonight in tonight's write-up. Yeah, we're going to go past the hips.
Yep.
And right up to the chin and jump right in. I will be sharing some links as the course of the evening goes on. If you would like your link shared, please mention in the chat and we'll share it. If you do not want your link shared, please let us know. We'll respect your wishes. That being said, I can't wait to get started with tonight's conversation.
There you go. Thank you, Marisa. Appreciate you. Now, we changed, as many of you can see, or at least a couple of you who have joined the chat. We changed our time. We did talk about it the past couple episodes. It is a new thing. For those that don't know why we're doing this, Jen has started a new job and she has to be there super early. And Sunday nights, as I've mentioned before, a lot of times doing the broadcast, it's wonderful and I love it, but it gets my mind going, and then it takes me a while to wind down. And same, Jen's the same way. So we thought we would move it a half an hour earlier, and we may find out that this doesn't work. Marisa has a daughter, and she's in school, so she agreed to try this. And if it doesn't work out and it's just not doable, we may go back to the other format. But we'll
and I might just have to bow out early,
right, which we don't,
which is
want.
Okay with me. But I mean,
Well,
I'm willing
okay
to.
with you. Yeah, I understand you're willing, but we don't want that if we can help it. So we're going to give it a try. So it's a half an hour earlier now, 7:30 instead of 8:00. And this is the first. I think we've done a show earlier for various reasons, but it hasn't been a continual thing. So we'll try it and see how everyone gets by with it. And if it doesn't work, we'll talk about what to do. Yeah, we're giving it a shot. So thank you for joining tonight. I'm sure I don't want to make assumptions, but some people don't know that we're changing the time probably. So it might be light attendance. Who knows? But either way, if you're listening to the playback, thank you for listening tonight. And please remember to join us in the chat if you can at some point. So, a little earlier might be better for some people and not as much for others. We're just glad you're here. So thank you. Jenn, take a minute. We have a few people in the chat, and they're waiting to have you say hello.
Hello. Okay, let's start at the top. Of course, we have Nez. She always beats me to the chat. We have Melted Zone is here. I haven't seen Melted Zone in a little while. Good to see you. Face the Ace is here, and I think for right now, and of course, Glenn. And that's it so far. Hey guys, glad you're here. Really appreciate you popping by and joining the discussion.
Yep, and as always, as always, we'll try to say hello to anyone new that comes in the chat. It's important to us to acknowledge and recognize people that take the time to say hello. So thank you for that. All right, as stated, tonight's episode is State of Being, Lighthouse. Welcome to part 2 of our new series, No Past, No Future. The series is inspired by the Audiomachine album Manifest, and for good reason. Tonight's selected song is Lighthouse. It's the second last song, as there is no YouTube video available, and the link is in the description. Last week, we looked at the merry-go-round, MGR, and those thoughts and attitudes that tend to have us spinning perpetually. Tonight, we look at a strategy for getting off the MGR and living with a mind that rests in calm thought. For Jenn, her story with me began with a video, How to Empty Your Mind, a powerful Zen story for your life. It is acknowledged that much of what is reproduced here comes from this video. There are 2 major lessons rather than many questions. This show will also focus on discussion of concepts and personal experience. The link to that story is also in the description. In short, the video is the story of Hiroshi, or how do you say that? Hiroshi?
Yeah.
There we go. He has a, quote, restless mind, unquote. Hiroshi has difficulty finding peace within himself. Hiroshi's inner turmoil affects every aspect of his life. Hiroshi wishes to empty his mind to seek and find serenity. To do this, Hiroshi seeks guidance from an old monk. Hiroshi is told that emptying the mind is not a task to force or do with haste. Hiroshi is told that emptying the mind requires patience, discipline, and self-reflection. The first lesson is mindfulness. The Oxford Dictionary defines this as, quote, a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique, end quote. Before one can find acceptance in one's thoughts, one needs to observe and reflect on those things that cause mental disquiet. Only then can the process of emptying the mind begin. We discussed some of those things last week. No doubt there are many more. Want to add any or recap? The second lesson is the art of letting go. Hiroshi is told to notice the tree, how it remains strong, by being flexible. Hiroshi is told that essentially the art of letting go is based on surrender. Hiroshi is told that holding on to thoughts that cause suffering are a barrier to finding inner peace. Hiroshi is told that each that each letting go of a thought evokes a sense of release, a weight lifted. Hiroshi is told when the mind is overwhelmed with thoughts, the way to alleviate is to return to the present moment. When you think of a calm and peaceful mind, what images present themselves? Looking at this further. To stay in the present, how do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and the fear of future scenarios? Is it just about the practice of relinquishing anxiety, or does it become a new way of viewing one's individual world, or both? Maybe. Why do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is a key to a calm mind? Why do you think holding thoughts is a barrier to a calm mind? As you can see, mindfulness and letting go is a process which requires much effort and intervention. It is not passive, and neither is it a walk in the park. A further summary is, peace can only be found by being present, and that attempts at denial are worthless efforts. You learn to sink the thoughts that embrace your inner peace and let go of ones that hinder it. Regardless, thoughts are fleeting. The true essence of emptiness lies not in the absence of thoughts, but in the awareness that is beyond them. Key is finding the stillness within the turbulence, which in effect means that even within the storm, on one level, there will be another deeper level where one still has inner calm. Does it make sense that we can exist on multiple levels? And how do you think that might work in relation to maintaining inner peace and calm? And then I will read the last of it. I'll read this part. So next week, we reverse engineer the topic of God, religion, and other spiritual matters. Firstly, identifying those things which are in contradiction with a calm and peaceful mindset, and then seeing what remains. I have the thought that there are surprises in store. We shall see. And I'll read the quote at the end. And it's, of course, from our friend Paulo. All right. I'm going to check the chat. I do see my friend John Robb from California. Welcome, Rob. We're glad that you're here. Faithful buddy that always tries to make it, and I appreciate that very much.
So he goes by Rob, right?
Well, I've always called him Rob. I mean, his name is John, but he didn't go by John back then. But I guess he decided.
Maybe he goes by John now.
Maybe he does. Yeah,
I'll call him by his full name. You're not in trouble, John.
John Brown.
Jennifer Lynn. Usually it's with the added last name, though, too.
Get that toolbox out of the living room.
Love it.
I
Sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no. You keep going. I just want to say something to Jen before we start.
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah.
I used to live with John and his ex-wife back in the day in Illinois, and John is a tinkerer, and he would get his toolbox out and work on various projects in the living room, which drove his ex-wife crazy. So she was always yelling at him, which reminds me of my dad, who got yelled at by my grandmother. He brought his whole motorcycle into his room so he could work on it when it was cold outside. My grandma didn't like that. So anyway. Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, sure. I was just going to ask Jen if she would mind recapping why the story behind her exasperation and what brought her to the point where we even discussed the topics of mindfulness and letting go. As basic, I didn't know whether it was a last resort, but it felt like things were getting pretty desperate. But
yeah, I would say it was a last resort.
Okay.
I was ready to go to the doctor and get on some medication. I was like, I don't know what else to do with my brain.
Yeah,
just a quick recap. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, you said to me about maybe taking uptake inhibitors, packs.
Yeah, or just getting something to help. So just a quick recap to the people that weren't here last week. So the end of May, there was a bunch of things happening, and my mind and thoughts were kind of ramping up. And I've always had this issue, but for many reasons, it was ramping up at the end of May, where I was having this thing which we've dubbed the merry-go-round. where my thoughts just were spinning out of control. I don't mean to sound like overly dramatic, but I wasn't recognizing that I've had a habit in my life of ruminating over stuff that has happened in the past, trying to understand it in order to heal, and also running down these hallways in my mind of the future, of trying to figure out what was going to happen, and even catastrophizing in a way, trying to like just real quick to say, okay, what if this happens? What'll I do? And then, but then what if this happens over here? And then what am I going to do? And part of this was from being in a toxic marriage, and there was a lot of drama and stress and fear and anxiety and all kinds of stuff happening pretty much on a daily basis for 13 years, I'll say. So it sort of created this pattern in my mind. And I just got to the point where I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is not okay. It's wearing me out and wearing out my body and my mind and my emotions and just everything. And so when I was talking to Glenn about it, he started talking to me about mindfulness. Now, one of the things I know, my Christian upbringing has really, there were some things that I was hesitant on, but I truly listened to what Glenn had to share, and he sent me some videos. And the conclusion that I've come to is that just like, with scripture saying, take every thought captive in obedience to Christ, I think for me, it really lines up, because no one ever talked to me about how to actually do that. They would quote the scripture to me, and I assumed that all I needed to do was pray. And I've prayed for a very long time, and it would get better, but then it would come back around. And that's kind of part of the merry-go-round that we're talking about. But no one ever talked to me about the option of actually being able to choose to control what you think about and how you feel. I did not think that was possible. I did not know that was an option. And so what was happening with me is I would let the thoughts come and just take over, let the feelings come and take over. And I kind of had to ride the wave, and it didn't go away, or I had to just let it play out for however long it took for it to go away. And that just is not conducive for a calm mind, a calm body, calm spirit.
Right.
It's really not good. So this summer, I have been on this journey of just learning new tools on how to have a peaceful mind and how to be present. And I think God intended us to be able to be present in the present moment, because it is a gift.
Yeah.
But I would love to see a chart. Maybe one day God will show me a chart of like my life up until this recent point, of how often or what percentage of time I actually spent present versus stuck in my mind, running down hallways of the past or the future,
Right.
with anxiety and fear and all this other stuff.
Right.
Because it was just not good. It was out of control. So that's
Yeah.
pretty much a recap.
Perfect. Glenn, do you have any comments before I?
I think that's very well explained. But would you mind, Cripps, recapping what you were seeing from looking at Jenn? I think that's just as important in many ways too, because you're seeing it firsthand and seeing the effects that it has on Jenn and obviously any relationship.
Yeah, I'd be delighted. I was going to also add, I'll do two things. I'll do what you're saying, and I have my own connection with this too. And I'll go over that. Well, no, I'll go over what I saw too. So, as we kind of alluded to, or Jenn alluded to, she didn't really tell me fully how much the struggle was. I mean, I saw the merry-go-round. I got an idea that from my perspective, what would happen was most of the time she was fine, and she had some things come up, various levels of difficulty for her, and she would share it with me. And sometimes she would be emotional, and we would talk about it, and I would, we would talk it out and discuss it, and then she seemed fine. But I didn't realize the extent to which, when her mind would spin up, I didn't realize how often this was happening. I really didn't.
Yeah. And it wasn't that I was trying to hide anything. It was more that I thought everybody dealt with this and it was normal.
Right.
Yeah.
So when she told me that, and she said that she was really having a hard time with this, and I had looked back on seeing her grow a lot, since we met. I mean, I could go into all the ways and all the things that I saw. And she did. She would get an epiphany. We would work through it, and we call it something broke off. And I have this theory, and I see that they don't. Although the terms that I use aren't used necessarily, I feel like we're born a clean slate in this world, and then things are piled on us by other people, by society, by in some ways by religion, governments, and etc. Music, philosophies, everything. It gets piled on us, and when we're children, when we're susceptible, when our brains are like sponges and we take everything in, and maybe for some people it's mainly good stuff, but for a lot of others it's a mixture of the two. And then if you're introspective and you start going through life, and in order to be free of some of these things, I say that you have to uncover, and that's mentally, physical, spiritual, emotional, the whole thing. That's what it seems like to me. So from those terms, I saw that Jenn had uncovered a lot of stuff. I mean, she's talked before about having come from a abusive relationship, a marriage of 14 years. So those people who've listened for a long time, I don't need to go and describe all that. So when we met, there was a lot of healing that took place, and there being in a safe relationship, an authentic relationship, was good for her, and it allowed her to kind of tend to her wounds and focus on other things, and that's what she did. But along with that came this. The result of all the stuff that she had been through was this thing that she describes as the merry-go-round, or Glenn termed the merry-go-round in her mind, that kept coming back up. So I was aware of it, but I just wasn't aware of how many times it would happen. It was more often prevalent than I was aware. So once she shared it with me, and I was made aware of it, I was like on board. I mean, I just want her to be in a calm place, and I would do anything to assist with that. I know that a lot of this the person has to do themselves. I've told her several times that the person you're with or other people around you can see you clearly and want you to be in a calm state, but I believe the person has to participate. They have to want it. They have to do the work that it takes to get there. And I know that Jenn is willing. There's no doubt in my mind that she has been willing this whole time. I've seen it over and over and over again. And rather than standing in her way, I wanted to come along with her like I have with other things on this journey, even if I had my own issues with it. And some of that we'll talk about more as the broadcast goes on, because my assumption is, because I've had my own sticking points with the idea of emptying your mind and manifestation and mindfulness and all this. I mean, I've heard my whole life that this is new age stuff and it's demonic and all of that. And we'll address some of that, I'm sure, next week when we get to the religion part. We may even touch on it some tonight. But I actually watched the two video. I believe there was two videos. Am I right about that, Jenn, that Glenn shared? There's two. I watched both videos, and I didn't have any adverse reaction to it. I didn't, clench up and go, "Oh my gosh," and because I'm just in a different place. But the idea of someone whose mind is in turmoil, and the advice to them is the emptying of the mind is not a task to force or to do with haste. Emptying the mind requires patience, discipline, and self-reflection. Those made sense to me, and it was a really good video. And but the most important thing is it seemed to work for Jenn, and it started this path that she's on. And so the second thing I was going to talk about was that it has helped me. Now, I don't have what Jenn has to the same extent. I pretty much really only have one thing that frustrates me and that my mind spins out about from time to time. And for not every month, but most months over the past 5-6 years, it's financial. And I've talked about that a little bit. And I know a lot of people struggle financially. And the first half of my life, I had plenty of money. I wasn't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I just didn't struggle. So about, I don't know, I'd say the first recession that affected me greatly was in 2010. So that's when it started for me. So 14 years ago is when things really started to change. And I would get really frustrated because of the financial struggle. And when rent comes due and bills come due, and I don't know how it's going to happen, I have this anxiety right in the center of my chest. And, I pray about it, and, I tell myself that everything's going to be all right. And everything usually is all right, but I still can't get rid of this anxiety. But that video started me on a journey myself of looking at some of the concepts in the video and doing a deeper dive on some of this stuff. And I find it very helpful for myself, but most of all, I see that it has really helped Jenn. And I think that it would help a lot of people, especially for Christians. They would have to get past a lot of programming. This stuff is satanic or new age, and everyone's free to have their own opinion about this stuff and decide for themselves. I'm not trying to tell anyone what works or doesn't work for them. But for me, this is an addition to what I've learned by being a Christian. And as many of you know, I have, for lack of a better word, I'll use the word that's popular right now, deconstructing from religion, not deconstructing from my relationship with God, or in fact, I would say that my relationship with God is stronger than it's ever been. It just is a different take for me. And getting rid of a lot of the religious chains and binds and other people's opinion of interpreting scripture and seeing it in the way they want to see it, as a means of control and manipulation and indoctrination. Those things are no longer a part of my daily life. And so it does open my mind up to the possibility of other things. And I'm at the point now where I feel like there's lots of truth out there in the world. I don't believe that a God as big as he is just decided to have one book and all the truth is in there and nothing else. There's truth in nature. There's truth in ourselves, in our own spirits. There's a part of God in everyone. I really believe that. But it gets covered up in various ways. And then so, as I mentioned earlier, a person that's introspective and wants to be in this place of peace rather than inner turmoil has to go about the task of uncovering the things that have been put on them. And certainly in the video, it wasn't saying uncovering, but it was Hiroshi's mind, the restless mind and the turmoil, and his journey of how he learned how to find a place of inner calm. And we all can do that. I don't believe that Hiroshi is the only person ever in history to be able to overcome a restless mind. And I think in today's society, there are so many people that struggle with this. So many people. It's not just Jenn. It's not just me in whatever little way that I struggle with it. I've known lots of people, especially having a psychological background and being in counseling situations. It's all over the place. And yes, even people who consider themselves Christians. And there's such a stigma with not all Christianity. There are Christian counselors. So some people embrace the idea that maybe sometimes the Bible is a companion to someone who has a restless mind or has other issues, addiction issues, and things like that. There may be supplementary work that needs to be done. Sometimes a counselor is a good idea. Sometimes there are other books to come alongside the Bible to help us get through a tough period in our lives. And to me, that's okay. Not only is it okay, it makes more sense to me that that God would put truth out there everywhere, knowing that this world covers things up the way it does. This isn't a surprise to him. He knows that this is the way it is. So I feel like I went on long enough. Hopefully I answered the question and then added my own little bit of my own part and a continuing journey for myself and looking at some of this stuff. And as I mentioned, I feel like this is just another step on the rung of getting to a place in my own mind. I will say about the financial stuff, we encountered after these videos and after doing some of the research that I did. I'm a researcher. That's what I do. So when this came along, I didn't just stop with the 2 videos. I continued to scour the YouTubes and looked at videos. And I don't agree with everything. I mean, just like anything else, just like within Christianity, there are lots of videos from different aspects of the mindfulness thing. Within Christianity, there's lots of different opinions on this, and people argue, or even if they don't argue, they have a different view of things. I know that's to be expected. So I look at it like everything else. I find what works for me and what matches up with my inner voice, which I believe to be the Spirit of God inside me, and what doesn't. And that's okay. I don't have to have someone else agree with my take on things. And that's really a different place than I'm in now that I wasn't before. I wasn't militant about it. I didn't try to force people to agree with me, but I'm just in a place now where I am able to allow people to believe what they believe, and I don't have to change anyone's mind. But it's important that I continue the journey. And for me, it's a lifelong journey of staying in a peaceful place and being grateful, living in gratitude. And those things are not bad. Those are not anti-God, and they're not demonic. So I think that's enough. We can move forward. Glenn, do you have any comments? Did that more than answer your?
No, I think that's really good. That sets a scene that
Okay.
basically any of us can get to a place of desperation. I'm sorry, you caught me when I'm chewing breakfast.
Oh, okay.
So
That's okay.
I'll tell you how I did it, albeit without any of this stuff. But let me chew this first.
While you're doing that, let me just briefly say hello to all that fluff and stuff. He says, "Yeah, mate, thanks." Where did he come in? I want to read where he came in because he was saying something about a lovely morning. Good day, beautiful. Oh my gosh, where is it? Oh, there it is. Good day from the Whitsundays, Queensland, Australia. Mates, it's a beautiful Monday morning here in paradise. I love it. Welcome, all that fluff and stuff. I said last week when I saw you that I love that name. It reminds me of HR Puff and Stuff. Of course, it probably has nothing to do with that, but that's what reminds me of a show that was on when I was a kid here in the States. I don't know if it was all over the place or not, but welcome. We're glad you're here. And our very close friend that we love very much, Bobby Meyer, is here. One of Maurice's longest and best friends. We love her, and we're glad that she's here as well. Bobby Meyer, and yep, fluff and stuff. I think that's it.
Okay.
If I missed anybody, forgive me. Go ahead, Glenn.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I think I'm pretty sure I remember saying to Jenn about the God thing. I said this will not compromise your faith, but it may well change your view as to how you perceive God in your life.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty well played out, and that'll be an interesting part of next week for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah.
but from my point of view, I can relate to Jenn because I think sometimes well, in many cases, particular life circumstances lead you to a point where you know that you have to change something, but you don't know what. You don't know how. It's like you're in a dead end. So I was not dissimilar in that I realised I had to do something because I was going to go crazy. So I just, in those days, there's no internet. You know, you can
Yeah.
get books and stuff like that. We didn't have all the access to resources.
Yeah.
So I just sort of stumbled around it.
Yeah.
And gradually just started to do what is here regarding the mindfulness in my own way. And I know that Sandra did it in a different way than I did.
Sure.
She did it like via mentors and people, philosophers and people like that. So we came at it from a different angle, but
Yeah.
got to a very similar place.
Sure.
And the other thing was after we started going to Japan, and I actually felt the mindfulness
Oh yeah.
and felt the calm. Oh my goodness, did that cement a lot? Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That just changed. That changed my whole perception of thought. Just added another 3 dimensions in one go. That was incredible. Sure. So you know, at one point you don't even understand what the meaning, calm and peaceful mind, actually how that manifests. You just don't know what it's like, and then all of a sudden when it hits you, it takes you down pretty fast.
Yeah.
You just can't believe it. It's like, how long has this been going on? I never knew. I had no
Right.
idea.
Right.
You know, this is almost like ridiculous.
Yeah.
To think that how that you could have existed in the past in a different way, and now you are completely different, completely changed.
Yeah.
Your attitude towards the world is so different. It's just so I'm a big tick for it, huge. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, to play off that a little bit, I have said before, to Jenn especially, I think I mentioned it last week, is sometimes you don't know how heavy something is until it gets lifted. And then when you feel the freedom of it being gone, you realize, yeah, I carry that around forever. And that reminds me of what you're talking about. I mean, I think people they can operate for a long time without even realizing the heavy weight that they're carrying, until something acknowledges that there is a weight first, and then somehow it gets lifted, and then they realize how heavy it had been. I mean, at least for me, I mean, that's something I have experienced a few times with various things, and this very topic is one of those things. I was just going to mention briefly with the financial stuff, we with Jenn having to leave a job at the end of May. It wasn't good for her. It just wasn't good. And I won't go on the details. I think she's already talked about it. But I was on board the whole time. I wasn't frustrated with her or upset or felt like she did anything wrong or anything like that. I knew that she would find something. I really wasn't worried about it. But of course, when rent became due, I mean, we were really blessed. The timing of when that happened, it really was a God/universe thing of the timing, because I'd just gotten my bonus, an extra $800, and we just are not in a place where we can live off my income alone. We're just not. I mean, I wish we were. I wish we could exist like that. You know, I would really love for Jenn to be able just to work on her art all day, and I really do wish that. I wish we had enough income where I could go to work and that be the case, but we just don't. So to go 3 months, June, July, and August, or not even all of August, really, so almost 3 months, roughly, and to have made it, it just blows my mind. Because, you know, when she was working before, it was a struggle every month, and so it just happened to work out. But this past month, the beginning of August, we went with a friend to an event where he was being recognized. He was invited to be part of the Hall of Fame for a band organization, Carolina Crown. For those of you who don't know about that, it's competitive bands, and it's just wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful, and it is an art. It ties into the whole arts thing, along with acting and orchestras and things like that, in my mind. But anyway, we went with him for the weekend, and of course he paid for everything. We couldn't afford to do it, but it was on him. He wanted us to be there. He paid for the hotel and food and that whole thing, and he didn't have any problem doing that, because his parents had left him a house, and he and his brother sold it, and he'd gotten a good deal of money. But anyway, we were in a bad place financially, and with the shadow of rent coming due, we were really, honestly, about $1,500 away from being able to even pay rent, and then didn't know how we were going to have the money to buy food and gas, and I have to drive into work, and And on top of that, that weekend, or was it the weekend before, Jen, that you'd accepted the other job, or was it the same week?
No, the weekend I'd accepted the senior care job. And then that Saturday morning when Marcus was picking us up, I got
Right.
the message about the nanny job.
Right. So it's the same weekend, and Jen had given in. She was going to taken a job because she knew we needed it, and I wasn't really crazy about it. There were a lot of red flags, but I was proud of her that she was willing to take something. But I didn't know how we were going to make it even moving forward. Taking that job just wasn't enough money. And then the minute she accepted the job, that later that morning, she got the call about the job that she has now, which is much better pay, much better situation all the way around. But we still didn't know how we were going to get to the rent being due the next Monday or Tuesday. So long story short, our friend helped us. We didn't ask him. I did share our situation, and this is a guy that I've known since I was 5 years old. We can't really count on our family, either one of us, and I'm not, downgrading them or saying there's anything wrong with that. But that just is the way that it is. And he was at the last minute willing to help us, and he loaned us some money or gave us some money, and we were able just to barely get by. And then Jen's been doing eBay stuff, and some of that stuff came through, and it just worked out. It worked out. We were able to pay rent, and then we've been able to make it until this past Thursday when Jenn got her first week check, and I got my regular check that comes in every 2 weeks. So now moving forward, Jenn has this job, and we're able to move forward. But here's the point. That weekend, normally when we're in a spot like this, usually it's about $400 or $500 that we're short when rent comes due, and I don't know how we're going to make it. That's usually about what it is, and this was way more than that. And I did have a little bit of anxiety. Now, this is after the mindfulness video that Glenn sent, and Jenn and I have talked a lot about this, and then the research that I've done, and doing some meditating and breathing and stuff like that, along with everything else I do with prayer and our daily prayers and my own relationship with God, all of that. And it was unbelievable how little anxiety I had. So it is getting better for me. And to me, that proves that it works. It works for me. It may not work for everyone, but it works for me, and it works for Jenn. And so this is one of the many reasons why we want to pass this along. In my mind, True Story Life has always been about true stories. This is a true story. It's something that we're going through, that we're experiencing, and Glenn and Sandra have experienced it as well. And they're willing to share what they've learned, not forcing anyone. In fact, Glenn, if you want to talk a little bit about how you knew it was the right time to mention to Jenn this stuff, and mention how, because you told her right from the beginning, this is not an easy go. It's very difficult to, in my idea, it's difficult to break programming, and it's hard to go from a place where your mind's spun up to get to a place of restless mind. It isn't easy, and even in the video, it wasn't easy. It took the guy a long time. It took him a long time, but he got there. We can all get there. Do you care to talk about that a little bit? How you knew that this was the right time?
Well, I think Jenn told me it was the right time. I mean, we had a history over probably quite a period of time where Jenn would be on the merry-go-round, and I know that I had said to Sandra, like, almost rolling my eyes, like Jen's had another epiphany, knowing full well that next week Jen's going to have a meltdown, and it's sort of big. And I can't even remember what Sandra says, but it probably wasn't. It probably wasn't for this show.
Was it colorful? It was colorful.
Colorful. That's a good word to describe it.
Yeah.
So the only way that I think a person is ready for change is when they really, a lot of times, they've got to get to the point, like you said that you had, where your exasperation level is so high that you're willing to be open-minded about the possibility that something, you're desperate essentially, like we said previously, and it just felt that it was the right time
Right.
because Jenn was, I mean, this up and down, round and round.
Yeah.
It is so debilitating
Yeah.
Yeah.
on every level. It's like
It's exhausting.
I'd be thinking, well, how do you get out of bed in the morning if you've got to deal with this stuff? And
Yeah.
for someone
Yeah.
who hasn't dealt with it, it probably sounds like this is, well, what do you think you're doing? I mean, it's not a case of getting out of bed at all. It's a case of that if you want to get somewhere in this situation, you've got to put in the work. This is not going to come to you just because you sit there and say prayers. I'm not being an atheist, but I just there's no way that I would say go out to the universe and say help me. No, I'd say, well, it's my responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm responsible. Once I get off my backside and start to do something, the universal or / God will intervene in whatever way it sees fit.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I was coming from. But and taking this forward, I'd really like to hear from Jenn, and I'm sure everyone here would like to hear just the process you went through about how up and down it is. Because to demonstrate that anyone who wants to take this on, don't think this is piece of cake stuff.
Right.
It isn't. It's two steps forward, one step back.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much a life. This is a lifelong commitment to the way you think.
Yeah.
So, if anyone's got any questions for me, I'm happy to respond. I don't know if you have, but if you
Sure.
put it to me, I'll happily respond.
Okay. Jenn, do you want to share what it was like for you, or do you have any questions for Glenn before we move forward?
Yeah, I just was going to mention that, I do believe in prayer and I pray, but I believe in this particular case with me and just with this spinning up kind of mind thing that goes on for some people, I do believe God wanted me to participate more.
Yeah.
So I was like praying and just sitting there waiting for an answer to drop in my lap. Now, I believe this is the answer he gave.
Yeah.
But it was in equipping me and me having to do the work.
Yep.
Not just a something falling into my lap kind of a thing, because I've been doing that for a really long time and it was not working.
Yep.
And when I first started, it was very much a tug of war. I do believe that we are programmed in certain ways and that we get to a point in life where, based on everything we've experienced and all the relationship processes that we've watched throughout our lives with family and friends and church and all kinds of stuff, we come to these, I guess like a subconscious agreement on how things work.
Yep.
And then we go on autopilot.
Yeah.
And so coming to this place of mindfulness, which is simply observing what's happening in your head, like, and there's been times that I have prayed that God would slow down my thoughts because I have ADHD and my thoughts speed around in my head like crazy fast.
Yeah.
So the very thought of trying to observe my thoughts and actually look at what I'm thinking, at first I was like, how the crap am I ever going to do that? Like, it just goes so fast. But it takes practice. And in the beginning of the summer, I felt like I was in a battle. And it was a battle because I could feel the old programming trying to pull me back into it.
Yeah.
While I was trying to sort of trudge a new road of thinking and observing the thoughts. And I've always identified myself, like when I have felt things or I've thought things, I've always identified with the thoughts and the feelings. And to come and realize that I am not my thoughts and feelings. God has created us to be so much more than just our thoughts and our feelings.
Right.
So that's kind of in a nutshell. It was a tug of war for a while, and it took practice, and I just floored.
Yeah. That's good.
I had no idea this was even a possibility, to be able to observe your thoughts and be like, that's a lie. That's not who I am. That's not what God's about, or that's not who God says I am. And that's not who I know myself to be. All of these different thoughts, and just slowing them down and, not even kicking them out, because Glenn's been very good about talking about, okay, for example, like I used to, if I caught a thought in my head and it was like a self-bullying thought, something that I thought really bad about myself, I would then beat myself up even more for having that thought. And so there's a way that you can come to these thoughts and feelings that you're having with compassion, with curiosity, with care, and treat yourself with the love that you treat other people and that you know God would want you to treat yourself with. And it
Yeah.
makes a huge difference, because I think when you approach yourself and these thoughts that you're having, these negative thoughts, with anger and irritation, that doesn't help.
Right.
Usually it makes things worse. And
Right.
I used to suppress a lot too. I used to suppress and push down, and thinking that the further I pushed it down or the harder I pushed it away, it would go away, but it usually came back stronger. And I'm like, what the
Right.
crap?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah.
So, approaching them with care and compassion and love has been incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Jen, sorry.
no, go ahead,
just
please.
going to say to Jen, would you think as a result of this process that you've become more compassionate, more empathic, and applied more of those values that you apply toward your behaviour towards others? Have you
Absolutely.
applied more to yourself? That's the key here. One of the keys.
Both. It's been for both. I've always been more compassionate toward other people than I have been myself,
Yeah.
but it actually has increased my compassion for other people, and myself, definitely.
Yeah.
And there's a piece in that too. My goodness,
Sure.
I think we can get spun up, whether we're bullying ourselves or being really judgmental and mean to other people, even in our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's no good.
Yeah.
Well, I can relate to what I used to see you doing about your past negative experiences, and that was, poor me. I got dumped.
Yeah. Yep.
I got all this shit heaped on me, rather than now you turn it around and you think, what have I learned? You immediately turn that negative into an experience of positivity.
Yep.
You can take away everything that you've experienced and incorporate those lessons into your own life. And
Yep.
you get away
Absolutely.
from thinking, poor me, I'm a victim. You're not a victim.
Nope. And that's something else that's actually grown too, because over the past few years, I have been, learning more self-forgiveness and worked through, forgiving my ex and stuff my parents did and things that happened in the past, of course. But self-forgiveness has been quite the journey. There was something else I was going to say though about that, and it just flew out of my head. It'll come back. You guys keep going. I forgot it.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say about this too, because having had such a background since the time, I don't remember a time in my earliest memories that I didn't grow up in a Christian atmosphere. My parents were Christians. My grandparents on my dad's side were Christians, aunts and uncles, that whole side of my family. And then the other side, my mom's side, they were churchgoers. I wouldn't call them Christians necessarily. I'm sure they would have said they were Christians, but it was still that kind of thing. And then went to Christian school. You guys have heard me say this. Went to private Christian school all the years of my life, except for kindergarten, first and half of second grade. And my senior year, I went to a public high school when all the stuff at PTL happened. So all of that, Bible studies, also attended Christian counseling, the influence of many Christian books and all of that. So in deconstructing from religion, I still have all this stuff from the Christian world in there. But here's the upside that I've seen to looking at other things where someone else, and what I was told to just avoid it, as I mentioned, because it's new age, it's demonic, it's of Satan, whatever, all that stuff. And perhaps some of it is. I mean, there are levels to this where people think they're their own God. That they take the idea of God being in them, being that we're all a part of God, into that we are a God. That doesn't work for me, and it's never going to work for me. I know that. I don't want to be a God. I don't see myself as a God, and so that doesn't affect me at all. so there are things within it that I don't agree with. But anyway, with a Christian background, what I can't help but see are the things that are common ground between this new idea and all the ideas that I've had. One example is turning all thoughts over into captivity of Jesus. That concept. The problem is there's lots of things from the Bible and within the Christian world. When anything goes wrong with a person, they just tell, "Oh, well, are you reading your Bible enough?" Many times there's not a whole lot of help with what you're dealing with. They just throw scriptures at you, and that has to be enough. And maybe for some people it's enough, but for other people it's not enough. And then so they don't tell you what that means. What does it mean to turn your thoughts captive over to Jesus Christ? What does that mean? I mean, I have my own ideas before of what it meant. And so the way I looked at it is we're sinful people. And so when I was tempted with the sin, I just pray about it and give the thought over to Jesus to deal with. Well, how does that help me? And it's this whole idea that Jenn mentioned earlier that we have to participate. And this is something that she and I have learned. I mean, within Christianity, they literally give you the idea that when something happens, we just pray and God's going to take care of it. Well, sometimes it doesn't seem like that's what happens. So, we hear in Christianity waiting on God. You just need to wait on God. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to
Or
wait
what does it look like? Yeah.
What does it look like? So Jenn and I, when we lived at the apartment, this has been 2 years ago now, we were in a point of trying to understand more what waiting on God was. We were, again, in a tough financial situation, and I had a horrible work from home job that was so stressful. I was having nightmares weekly from the stress of it and the anxiety of it. I wasn't in a good place, but we still had to pay bills. And I needed a real job. I just did. It wasn't, in my mind, I mean, it wasn't a real job and it wasn't the right job for me. But I had this running through my head, this whole idea of waiting on God. Well, he's going to present something. He's going to open a door for us. And honestly, sometimes he does. Sometimes it seems like God opens a door for us that we didn't see before. But as I look back, that for me has been me being willing to participate. And this is what Jenn mentioned. This is where we're at. We have learned that this takes participation. It's not a magic trick. God's not a genie in the sky that we just send our prayers up and magically coins drop from a slot machine. It's not the way it works. So we have to be willing to participate. So that's what this is. Now, Glenn may disagree with that, but that's the way I see it. We can't force it. Of course, I agree with that. We're not trying to force anything, but we have to be open to participating with God. We do. And when we're in that place of willingness to be open to what he has for us, and we're doing what we can, that's when things really change. So in the story, I did get a real job, and it's still often a struggle financially, but it's not as bad as it was during that period of time. And I have learned a valuable lesson. So a person has to be willing to participate with all this stuff. It's not a magic trick. It's not oftentimes. I mean, I'm not saying miracles don't exist. I'm sure people have stories where they did nothing and they just waited for someone to knock on the door and give them money or give them a job. I mean, I've heard stories like that. I have, but it hasn't happened to me. Nobody's ever knocked on my door and handed me a check. It hasn't happened for me. So I can either grumble about that or I can go into myself and say, well, I must be living in some kind of secret sin. There must be something I'm doing wrong that's preventing God from giving me what I need. But the most peace I've had is when I have been willing to participate and I have engaged this stuff, any stuff. There's some responsibility for you in it.
Yeah.
Right. And in this case, in the idea of mindfulness, it is, It is patience, discipline, and self-reflection. You have to be introspective. You have to be willing to look at yourself, take a really good look at yourself. And I think that's true about Christianity too. For someone within the parameters of, within Christianity, they say that we're all sinners. And the idea of turning to Christ in the first place is step one, realizing that you're a sinner in need of God. It takes some introspection to get to that point. And whether I agree with that at this point or not is beside the point. There's some participation even within Christianity for that. And when someone becomes a Christian, yeah, I'm sure their mindset changes, and that's where the changes come in. That's where the new life comes in, and the Holy Spirit, works in your life to create change. But what we've seen on TSL, which has brought us to this point, is we've seen lots of people that are claiming to be Christian, and Glenn saw it first. I didn't really see it, but once Glenn brought it to my attention, once I was aware of it, I could see it all the time. People are miserable. They're miserable. And of course they're miserable. And we'll talk more about this next week with the religious aspect of it. But I'll just say briefly, what we've noticed is that people are miserable, and we have been trying to figure out what the problem is. And a lot of these write-ups from Glenn and from us, the series I did on the God of the Old Testament and all that stuff, all of it has been leading to this point. And it is being willing to take a look at your belief system, take a look at what works and what doesn't, and why. If something doesn't work, why it doesn't work. And it's not an easy thing to do.
No.
And this stuff, emptying your mind and all of that, especially if your mind's spinning up all the time and you have all this pre-programmed ideas of the way things are supposed to work, it isn't easy. But the Bible talks about a peace that passes all understanding, but it doesn't describe how we're supposed to get there. Oh, we're just supposed to, be saved and the Holy Spirit's going to do all the work. Well, that's not been the case for me. I believe God /universe /Bob wants us to participate. It doesn't just give us everything that we want. And it's not even about that. For me, it's about, the title of this is part of the title is Lighthouse. I love lighthouses, love them. In fact, for anyone that's a Facebook friend of mine, you'll see that my picture has been on there for a long time. My icon is a lighthouse. I love the idea of a lighthouse. And biblically speaking, we're supposed to be salt and light to the world. We're supposed to be a light, a city set on a hill that will not be moved. And we're supposed to let our light shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify our Father which is in heaven. So that's still very much a part of who I want to be. I don't want to force people into believing what I believe, but I want to be available for people to help in any way I can. And rather than spreading darkness, I want to spread light. And this is a way for me to do that. It's another tool, in my opinion, to get to the place of a mental calm, because I find that when I am calm mentally and I've got my things in order, it makes me better suited to be able to help other people if they're in need of that. And that's been important to me for a very long time. That's all I have to say about that.
Well said.
I don't know how, if someone sees themselves as a sinner,
Right.
how that is supposed to transpose into feeling good about yourself, and also being a person who views the other people in the world with compassion, because then you see them as sinners.
Right.
I don't get it, how that works.
Right. Thank you. And neither do I. I was just talking to Jenn about this, in the idea of AA. So someone destroys their life with alcohol and they go to AA and they do the 12 steps and they forgive themselves and they forgive others, and all that stuff is good. I'm not against AA. But you know what they do every time they go to a meeting? They stand up and they say, "My name is Jason, I'm an alcoholic." They're still identifying as an alcoholic forever. Even if it's been 20, 30, 40, 50 years since they've had a drink, they're identifying as an alcoholic. That bothers me. Well, it's the same thing within Christianity. It's the idea of, didn't we change? Didn't when the Holy Spirit came into us, didn't he make us a new creation? Well, why are we still calling ourselves sinners? Why is that still happening? And whether we're supposed to do that or not, I see other Christians like myself who still struggle with this internal idea that we are still sinners, because we keep hearing it. Oh, we're still sinners. Oh, well, if something's not going right in your life, that's because you've got some hidden sin that you're not confessing. No. No, that doesn't work. So you're absolutely right, Glenn. And I believe, how are you supposed to be salt and light to the world if you still see yourself as a rotten, dirty, disgusting sinner? That part just doesn't work for me anymore. It doesn't work. Still believe in Jesus. Still believe that there is a force, a creator out there that's part of us, who cares about us and has and wants us to participate in a life. There's a purpose for all of us to be here, and it's not just waiting for some eternity, in my opinion. I mean, I feel so much better as I'm trying to live the life that God has given me now. Honestly, I'm at the point where I don't know exactly what the eternity, and the truth is nobody really knows what eternity is like. I mean, we have all these near-death experiences and they're all different stories. How can it be different stories? I mean, if they were all the same, I would probably tend more to believe in what they tell us it's like. But they're all different stories. I mean, people see all different kinds of, I mean, it's just a lot. But nobody who's died and it wasn't a near-death experience has come back to tell us what it's like. But the point is, within Christianity, we're all waiting for the rapture. We're all waiting to be taken out of this world. Well, God put us in this world for a reason. We should live the life that we have now. It's a gift. We should be grateful for the life, the breath in our lungs and the blood flowing in our veins, and be what we're supposed to be here, not just for others, but for ourselves. And that's hard to do in this world sometimes. It is, because there's just a lot of stuff out there. But this is one way to do that. As says, no, we're not all waiting for the rapture. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're not waiting for the rapture, but I mean, I can go on YouTube right now and pull up any number of videos of people just saying we're only passing through. We're visitors on this planet. There are songs about it. They preach about it all the time, that we're just passing through. The idea is that this world is not our own. And the idea is that we're not supposed to be part of the world. The world is evil. The flesh is evil. But I keep coming back to the idea that God put us in these bodies and he gave us a purpose. We have a purpose, and it's not just to wait for the end and to store up treasures in heaven and just wait for our death and wait for eternity. But we can disagree on that. That's okay. Let me check the chat, see if anyone new popped in. I don't see anybody. All right. Well, let's dive into. Glenn took the trouble to put in a write-up, so we should probably get to it. I'm going to read the parts of the story first, and then I'll go down to the questions. So the first part is Hiroshi is told that emptying the mind is not a task to force or do with haste. Hiroshi is told that emptying the mind requires patience, discipline, and self-reflection. So the first lesson is mindfulness. Second lesson is the art of letting go. Hiroshi is told to notice the tree, how it remains strong by being flexible. Hiroshi is told that essentially the art of letting go is based on surrender. Hiroshi is told that holding on to thoughts that cause suffering are a barrier to finding inner peace. Hiroshi is told that each letting go of a thought evokes a sense of release, a weight lifted. Hiroshi is told that when the mind is overwhelmed with thoughts, the way to alleviate is to return to the present moment. Now, I do have a couple comments to make. So, as I said, I did watch the video, and I have learned a lot about this. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm still learning, and I'll be, like I said, it's a lifelong thing for me, learning. I'll be learning until I breathe my last breath, and then I'll be learning more after that, in my opinion. Um, I still believe that this isn't the only life we have. I believe there's something after that. I just don't know exactly what it is. The idea of the tree, how it remains strong by being flexible. I mean, we see this in nature. This is very easily a thing that we can look at the way trees bend in the wind, or flowers bend in the wind and don't break. It's amazing. It's amazing the thought that went into creation and how things are constructed like that. Yes, there are hurricanes and stuff that blows tree over. I get it. There are examples of where it doesn't bend, it breaks off and ends up on the ground. I get that. But in general, from the story, it's remains strong by being able to bend in the wind. It's beautiful. And then the second one, the art of letting go, is based on surrender. It's a difficult thing to let go of your thoughts sometimes, whether it's turning your thoughts captive to Jesus Christ, or whether it's just letting go of your thoughts. However, the person is trying to do it. At least for me, sometimes the thoughts just keep coming. I can think about something else and let it go, but a lot of times it just comes back. So how do you really let go of it where it doesn't come back? It's about surrendering. The idea from the video is about surrendering to it and letting it wash over you, but not letting it define who you are in that moment. I think that's beautiful.
Crips, I think the surrender is a bit deeper than that. But I
Oh,
just
go ahead,
wonder what
please.
other people think.
Please.
I think surrender also it talks about your ego, your power. I think once when you cling on to all this stuff that you've got, how do you be mindful? Is my question. I don't see how it's compatible. I think letting go is not just is a more complicated process, because you know yourself. Once you fixated on what you have and are not prepared to surrender it, where do you go? You never go anywhere, do you? Like I'm this, I'm that. My beliefs are this. It's all fixated, unless you open yourself up to possibility, which I would sort of see as surrender. Are you not inhibiting your potential, essentially, to get to that calm place? Because you don't know what it is until you get there.
Oh, I can speak on that briefly, and that's
Please.
the idea of as I've talked about doctrine, where a lot of times in Christianity, doctrine is more important than actually doing what Jesus said to do, which is to love others. Jesus didn't talk a lot about doctrine. He talked a lot about being loving, being kind, and he fed people and healed people and did things to help. It wasn't about doctrine. So yes, when we cling to doctrine as being the most important thing, this is what I believe and hold strongly to that, and that's what we're told to do. I'm not blaming anybody. We're told to stand in our strong beliefs so that we're not washed away like the sand, you know. But it's difficult when you're holding on to things so tightly to be open to anything new, for sure. Jen, do you have a comment to make about that? Is Jen?
Jen just held up.
Oh,
She'll be back soon.
oh, I didn't see.
No, she messaged.
Oh, okay.
Just so she's held up.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything more?
Des got anything to add? Well, she's been the quiet church mouse.
She has. Marisa, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I'm doing good. I think I'll have a little more to contribute when we get into the more religious aspect of it
Sure.
next week. I'm not a Zen Buddhist. I'm not into the Tao. I know what this is, and I'm just opting to not go there. So I've been there, done that, and I'm not going to go there right now, but please continue.
Okay. Glenn, is that what this is? Is
I think there's a whole lot of concepts come from a whole lot of different places, of which Buddhist, Zen,
yeah,
etc. Is just one.
yeah,
But you look at philosophers throughout the ages, a lot of this is common.
yeah,
Just a case of where you want to start from.
right.
So I don't think you can really label it as such.
Well, I haven't watched a single video that it labels itself Buddhist or Tao or whatever. I mean, it may be that, I guess, but for me, um, it's it's finding truth. I believe there are bits of truth in every religion, and I'm sure people are going to disagree with that. I mean, it within each religion, everybody thinks that their religion is the only one that's right. I mean, that's just a fact. Um,
I
so
think
for
the main thing here is with these concepts, in no way, and it's never been suggested that this is a replacement for or rejection of God.
right,
It's not. I believe it. From where I sit as on the other side of it, I see this as very complementary to belief in God. Actually,
yeah,
I just think that your perception changes of how
yeah,
you see how how you see God.
sure,
I mean, God is seen in many different ways. One with your individual personal relationship, and then other people see it through religion and through fellowship and
right,
through through various means. I just
exactly,
think this I think in many respects mindfulness allows, and if you're prepared to think on it, allows each person to clarify where they sit and in relation to all this stuff. I think there can be clarity that comes from this. So that's just my outsider's view anyway. I don't know what you think. But
no, I agree with that at all. I mean, I agree with that totally. And you may not know this as much as I do, but as I said at the beginning of the broadcast, that because I did grow up within Christianity, the idea is that anything that's not doesn't have the Christian label on it is to be avoided, marked and avoided, and we shouldn't listen to it at all. And I'm glad I'm out of that because, like you said, I wouldn't be able to learn more and get closer to God by realizing that He's not just in one place, but he's everywhere. He's involved in everything. He or she or whatever um, is part of everything. And in the past, if someone had said that to me, I would have labeled it New Age, and I wouldn't have. I would have listened because I'm a little bit different in that I'm willing to listen to anybody. I really am. I always have been. I would still have my own thoughts, and I may internally disagree with the person. I might even say, "Well, I don't really agree with that," but you have the right to your opinion. But that's not what I see across the board. What I see is people, as I've mentioned before, within Christianity, demonizing people, being in each other's throats, even Christians with Christians, if they disagree on various things. And I just have been tired of that for a long time. So I'm I have been and will continue to be in a place where, for me, this is just talking about some things. It's just discussing it. There are things, as I mentioned, that I'm coming across that I don't agree with. Like I mentioned, the being a God thing. I don't agree with that. For me, it doesn't work for me. It may work for someone else. So I'm not going that direction. And as far as labeling it, as I said, I have found truth within parts of Christianity that I still haven't let go of, and I'm not going to let go of because it makes sense to me. The spirit in me, the spirit of God within me, tells me that it's true. And so if I'm clenching on to my own doctrine, man taught, man made doctrine that is their interpretation of Scripture that a lot of people haven't even really read and read it in context of the actual words that are being said. Um, I don't want to be that. I want to read for myself, and I want God to show me, but by me being open to it, to show me more truth, and that's what's happening, in my opinion. But very clearly okay and very aware that not everybody's going to agree with a lot of this, and I get that. It's okay.
Yeah, I
You don't
sure
have,
had an interesting story at the at the church. Well, when I just got back from overseas, I was just went back, etc. To say I was alive, sort of thing, and it was very interesting. We started having a discussion, and I mentioned because Levi knows yourself and Jenn, etc.
right.
etc. So I was just giving a basic sort of shortened version of what's happening, and I made the comment that, and I knew this was going to go down like a dose of not. I said, well, I think that what happens is that the universe becomes more godly, and God becomes more universal in the way you see it. And of course, I could feel the, oh my goodness, I don't agree with this.
Yeah,
You can see it,
right.
see it. But then there's a new guy there, and I was talking with him. He said, I agree with that. So it was very interesting. So I thought, okay, it just goes to show you that even within the religious, the church, there are people there who are thinking. It's just that they may not be overtly coming out with it.
Right.
So you need someone like me to bring it out.
That's true. That's true.
Have the discussion. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that like that you would have two people who really could have different thought process, but still be within the church and
Yeah.
be believers, etc. So just
Well,
a thought.
I think probably there are more people within churches and even in other religions that have other beliefs, but they don't feel always like it's a safe place to share what their thoughts are. And we know this is true because deconstruction is a big word right now within Christianity. So many people are realizing the abuses. And again, I'm sure this will come up next week, but just mentioning it briefly because it ties into what you're talking about. There are people that have questions and they want answers, and they go to a pastor and ask the questions. And sometimes the questions, they don't even want to field the questions. And so they're asked to leave. And I just don't feel like that's the way God. I never saw Jesus tell anyone that asked him a question. He never said, "Oh, don't ask that question. Get away from me." He just never reacted like that. He was very willing, like the talk with the Samaritan woman, for instance. I mean, he was very direct with her, at the well. And by the way, that's my mom's ministry that she had, Come to the Well. It was a very meaningful story to her, and so it weighs heavy on my heart too. The conversation that Jesus had with the Samaritan woman at the well. And it's an interesting story. And a lot of people have their own interpretations of it, which is the way it works with scripture. People read scripture and they have one idea, and then someone else comes along and they have their own idea, and that's the way it is. But her idea was that Jesus was someone that wasn't just there for the Jews. He went out of his way to go to Samaria, and even the disciples were telling him, "Hey, this is not the quickest route. We're not supposed to go to Samaria." I mean, they very much were a people that were not in a good place, not allies at that time. And I can go into the history of it and all that, but I don't feel like I need to. But Jesus had an appointment in his mind. He had to meet this woman, and he was very direct with her, but he took the time, went out of his way to have that meeting, and he changed her life forever. So said all that to say that if you really look at the way Jesus treated people, and that's what you live your life by, then you're going to be a person who is willing to listen to other people, whether you disagree or not. And you're going to show kindness to them and be open to their thoughts and be willing to have a conversation. And most of all, to be loving to them and not tell them they're sick and they're going to hell and all that. So the point is, though, that I'm sure there are people within lots of churches that have differing thoughts, but a lot of them don't feel safe. And if it's important enough for them to say something, a lot of times they're just cast out rather than someone actually spending the time to try to work it out. So that makes sense to me that some people would kind of have the reaction to what you're saying, and then there would be at least one person that seemed more interested. I'm sure that's like that all over. Okay, so getting to our first, I think I read everything. Weight lifted. I mentioned we stopped at surrender a little bit. The next one is Hiroshi is told that holding on to thoughts that cause suffering are a barrier to finding inner peace. I'll just briefly say about this that focusing in on how horrible things are has never worked for me. I've done a lot of that. I've done a lot of wailing of life has done this and life has done that. And the thing is for me that it's true. I mean, there are some things I've done to myself by making poor decisions in the past. But I was telling Jen, I haven't done any of that in a long time. But there are lots of things like the recession of 2010. I had nothing to do with that. I didn't bring that on myself. It happened to me and lots of other people, and it screwed things up for a while. Nothing to do with that. And it just seemed like every time I thought this was going to be the thing that gets me to the next level in life, and then something would happen to mess it up. And to find peace throughout that can be a difficult thing. So, if we're holding on to the suffering part, it makes it difficult to do that, to find inner peace. Hiroshi is told that each letting go of a thought evokes a sense of release and weight lifted. I mean, I can attest to that. There's a lot of relief, weight lifted. I mentioned earlier, sometimes you don't even know you're carrying it until the weight's lifted. And part of that is acknowledging it. For me, part of is acknowledging it, realizing that it's an issue, and then releasing it, letting it go. And that's another part that ties in with what Jesus said. The idea is to bring your burdens to him, and he'll set you free. He came to set the prisoner free. And I believe that. Hiroshi is told that each letting go of a thought evokes. Okay, I've read that one. Hiroshi is told that when the mind is overwhelmed with thoughts, the way to alleviate it is to return to the present moment. So this is the biggest thing. This is one of the biggest things that Jen and I are working on, and Jen or Glenn mentions it later in the write-up. So we'll get to that. But it's the idea of not taking what has happened to us in the past and projecting it onto the future, but trying to live in the present. And I get a lot of peace out of that, because a lot of times we spin things up, like Jen's talked about. She spins things up and goes down all these hallways of what could possibly happen. And I think in a way that's a natural thing to do. We're trying to protect ourselves from something that could happen. It seems smart to do that. But for her, it was not really a good thing. So she's learning how to try to just be in the present, live for today. And again, this is another thing that matches up for me with the Bible, the idea of letting tomorrow take care of the things of itself. Don't worry. Worry doesn't help the situation. A lot of times I've worried about something and spent a lot of time in that place of worry. And then I realized that it was not something I needed to worry about in the first place. It ended up being okay. So that's important. All right. So Glenn's question: when you think of a calm and peaceful mind, what images present themselves? When you think of a calm and peaceful mind, what images present themselves? Glenn, do you want to take that one first?
No, it's not an easy one, is it?
No.
Nothing. To be honest.
Okay.
Your mind is empty. That's the image. It's like, as I've said to you, how I do TSL. I can't do it unless I clear my mind out and be open to let stuff come in.
Right.
So from my point of view, the practice of being able to empty your mind or being in that place, it's like when people try to sleep and they say, my mind's running, well, how do you sleep when your mind's running? I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
just, I think it's an art form,
yeah,
being able to do it. But I just did it by trial and error,
right,
to be honest.
right.
I sort of fell over
Uh-huh.
it by accident almost, and then
Sure.
after I'd sort of thought, well, how do I do this?
Yeah.
I didn't even know I wanted to do it. It was only when it happened, sort of, and then I did more trial and error to see if I could, like, it's okay, here's the example is the music, right? It's like, and I know people might think it's crazy, but it's like a conduit between having an empty mind. It's in your head, but you don't hear it in the sense that you are listening to it.
Right. Right.
It doesn't interfere with your mind.
Right.
It's there in the background, and it's like a conduit, and allow stuff to come in from wherever it comes. I
Sure.
know that sounds ridiculous, doesn't
No,
it?
it doesn't to me.
Well, yeah. So basically, it's just that my image is my mind is totally empty, and then therefore be able to be receptive
Yeah.
to what comes.
Yeah. I love it.
I'll go through it.
I'm going to get to Jen here in a second. She's back.
She
So
may not be here. Oh, she must.
she
might be
just
back. Yeah.
messaged, that she was back. So Bobby Meyer, our friend, says, when I try to get my blood pressure down, I visualize a breezy, sunny beach. And then she adds, my mind is always running when I try to sleep, so I always put on a movie that I've seen before so I don't have to pay attention, but it gives me something to focus on besides my own thoughts. I mean, that works for you, and I think that's wonderful. And Jen says she does that too. Jen says, I see it as the mind being calm, not empty per se. That's just me. I see it that way too. I mean, for Glenn, it's empty, and I get that. I, I don't know that I'm trying to have my mind be empty. I don't seem to have such a hard time doing that at certain points, especially with breathing and relaxing, allowing my body to relax, because it very much the body that we have is part of the whole existence. To me, it's not just that we're spirit. We have a body. God gave us a body, and we're in it, and it serves a purpose, and it's a mind body connection that's important. But how do you see it, Jen? When you think of a calm and peaceful mind, what images present themselves to you?
Well, it's funny because when with meditating, I do picture just nothing. So I could see why some people say empty.
Yeah.
Usually the stars,
Yeah.
it's
Sure.
just that open expanse. That's what I picture.
Yeah.
One thing I was gonna,
No, please continue.
shoot, did I lose it? Did it fly out of my head? It was off of something someone said. It'll come back to me. Good.
Yeah, I've got a couple things. Like Bobby, I like breezy beach. I love that imagery, and also I love the forest.
Yes.
Birds, and
Forest is great.
we were talking about that earlier. Crickets and birds, and I love a nice breeze in the forest too, where the trees are swaying back and forth. That's a very peaceful thing to me. A lot of times for me, it's love. It's love for my wife and my best friend, and for my family. It's the love that I feel for people that helps me be peaceful. I realize that with love, for me it changes everything, and I'm learning to love myself probably for the first time. I feel like I loved myself when I was a kid. I've talked to Jen about this. I feel like, because I can remember how I saw the world, and before all the stuff was thrown on top of me. And I don't need anyone to agree with that. That's my perception. It's the way I saw things as happening. I was a friend to everyone I met. I was excited about every day. My eyes were wide open, and I couldn't wait to see what new thing I would learn about. I looked at the world with wonder and awe and excitement, and I looked at meeting new people like that as well.
Yeah.
I loved everyone, regardless of gender, color, religion, any of that. And it's the stuff that people put on me that I had to break free of, where we learn prejudices. I mean, and they've tested this. They've gone back, and there was a teacher back in I believe it was the 60s, that was very popular for a long time. You can still find her videos. I don't remember her name, forgive me, but she did experiments with kindergartners, first and second graders, and asked them questions. And there were Native American children and African American children and obviously Caucasian children in there as well. And they all played together and had fun together, and they didn't see them as any different. I mean, yes, of course they could tell that someone had a different color skin than they did, but they came by it naturally. They would just ask questions, and the kid that was being asked the questions had no problem answering the questions. Their racism didn't exist at that level. These are things that we learn. So the same thing happened to me. I remember being that person. And also my mother would tell me stories about when I was a kid. And one story in particular is when she had a miscarriage between me and Shannon. And I was 3 when Shannon was born. So I must have been 2 years old when this happened. So I don't have a memory of this, but this is a story she told me, that she was crying because she had a miscarriage before Shannon was born, my sister. And I came and sat on her lap and I said, "Don't cry, Mommy, I love you." And that moved her. And it was just me being me. I just loved people naturally. And I think it's like that for a lot of kids. We're born in this world not as vipers in diapers, as the Calvinists say, that we're just born these horrible reptile sinners automatically. We're a clean slate, tabula rasa, and things get put on us, and sometimes it's good things, sometimes it's bad things. For most of us, it's a mixture of things. And all I'm trying to do is get back to that part of me with all the experience that I've learned. Of course, I can't be a child again, but again, it ties in to what Jesus said. You have to be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And people have their opinions of what that means. And I think it's this. I think it's being loving, being kind, not being a racist, not arguing with people over their beliefs and telling them that what they believe is wrong, or telling them they're horrible people. Being direct and being open, of course. I mean, we should always be authentic and we should always be honest with people, but we can do that in a way that's loving. And that's all I want for myself. So when I think of being loving, that is an image that comes to my mind as being calm and peaceful. Marisa, do you have anything you want to share when you think of a calm and peaceful mind? What images present themselves to you?
I think of Jesus walking on the water, and I think of him sleeping in the hold of the ship during the storm when the disciples were freaking out. But Jesus was calm, wasn't he? And
He
that
sure was.
really is where I've been going lately.
Wonderful.
When my mind is going, and I can relate, especially when it's bedtime. I just, my mind goes and goes.
Yeah.
But, if I'm just going to, I either trust God or I don't
Right.
at the end of the day.
Okay.
And if I do, then I can just lay all my cares, all my burdens, all my worries, everything at his feet. It's hard to let go sometimes, though.
Sure.
Sometimes we want to hang on to those things.
Yeah.
Don't we? Yeah, guilty. Guilty as charged. But once I pry those things out of my hands and give those over to God, then I find I can relax so much more if I just shut up, be quiet, and trust him like I say that I do.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for your answer, Marisa. Appreciate that. I'm going to ask you a question in a minute, but I've been wanting to say hello to Dana, and we keep talking about stuff. And I'm so sorry, Dana, that I didn't say hello to you. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. And Dana has the Conscious Evolution channel. If you haven't visited him, please do that. Marisa posted a link to his channel, so please do that. And also, Flat Earth Handy is in the chat, and we're glad that you're here. He says he or she, I'm not sure which it is, forgive me, but they say, peace be with you, friends. I appreciate that. We love that. And also, Naughty Nikki B is in the chat as well. And we're glad that you're here. Thank you for stopping by. We appreciate all of you. Thank you. Marisa, I wanted to ask you a question. You mentioned that Jesus wasn't freaking out when the disciples were. Do you have a thought on why that was? Why did Jesus not freak out? Was it just because he was God and he knows everything, or was it a different reason, do you think?
Well, I think he trusted his Father.
Sure.
He knew that he wasn't in danger. He knew that nobody on the ship was in danger. So I don't think it even occurred to him to be afraid, because he was perfect without sin. He wasn't going to worry.
Right.
Why should he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why should he? Right, exactly. That's a good answer. Thank you, Marisa. Did everyone answer that one? I think they did. Yep. Next one, to stay in the present. How do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and fear of the future scenarios? And this is what I was mentioning earlier, because I have really looked at this in my own life, and I have done a lot of this too. As I said, maybe not as much as Jenn does or has, but I do it too, like with the finances. Now, I don't do it as much as I used to, but I have been more able to try to focus on the present, except when it comes to bills and stuff. And I do see that as a weakness, and I'm working on it. But it's the idea of having had past experiences, and we're projecting that on the future as if that's what's going to happen. So to stay in the present, what I've done is just try, how am I today? What is my situation today? Yes, I've got rent coming up, whatever it is, in a week, or it's usually not till the week before that I start to feel the internal anguish and anxiety. And like I said, it's gotten better, but in the past, I could count on it, and I would share it with Jenn, and she's fully aware that this is something that I struggle with, and she's been very helpful to me to, remind me that everything's going to be all right and it'll work out. And, we pray together and things like that. The meditation has really helped, and calming my thoughts and breathing has helped. And for me, again, these are along with prayer. I haven't stopped praying. I haven't cut off my relationship to God. In fact, as I said earlier, it's increased, because I am, in my opinion, I'm more in touch with the Holy Spirit, because I'm uncovering all this other garbage that has been put on me, and things that I have accepted. It's not just that it's been put on me. I have accepted these things and taken them as my own, and held on to them. And in me releasing them, it has allowed me to be in a clearer mindset and a more peaceful place. And as I said, and I'll keep saying, it may not work for everyone, but it does for me. So for me, it is learning how to try not to project or assume that because things happened in the past that they're going to happen in the future, and just focusing on the moment. And again, as I said, this ties into what Jesus said. This is the idea of worrying about the future. I mean, the future will take care of itself. We can't, how can we change our stature? How can we add another hair to our head by worrying about it? We can't. It's impossible. There's no point. And 9 times out of 10, when I have looked back at how I worried about something, I've wasted time that I could have spent, as Jenn says, being present and being aware and enjoying the moment that you're in, rather than worrying about something that happens in the future. What do you say, Jenn? How do you think?
What was the question?
Yeah, sure. To stay in the present, how do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and fear of future scenarios? It's a good question.
Well, I was going to say something earlier, and it ties into this question, breathing. focusing on your breathing, it's very helpful to remain in the present. Being grateful is also something else that's a great tool to remain in the present.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I wasn't breathing. And I connected it with the times I was ruminating of past stuff or running down hallways of the future. I would either be breathing really shallowly or I would be holding my breath.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my mom said something like a month and a half ago, we were talking on the phone, and something she said helped it click for me. She said that I didn't realize that she does the same thing. She'll like literally hold her breath, or she'll be breathing really shallowly
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
she's stressing out about something or ruminating. And she actually brought up the fact that it gives her headaches. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is why I have been in the past. I've gotten so many headaches. And also the jaw pain that I was dealing with, the jaw clenching. A lot of times it would happen when my brain was going into those places, either past or future. But when I remember to breathe and be present in the present moment and not worry, that's not there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
breathing's been a big part of it.
Thank you.
Our bodies need oxygen. I would have thought.
Well, and Jen, I'll just say briefly, I've noticed the difference when you and I first got married and we were sleeping together. I noticed. Remember me saying I noticed that your breathing was different.
Yeah, it was
Like
really shallow.
It was shallow. It was, and then other times I would lay my head on your chest and your heartbeat sounded fine, but your breathing, it just sometimes it was fast and sometimes it was really shallow, and it has changed completely. I don't even notice it anymore. I mean, I know
that's
you're
good.
breathing. I know you're breathing.
There were some times that you were checking to make sure I was still breathing,
that's
right?
true. That is true. That is absolutely true. I would get my head close to you where I could see if your breath was coming out. Yeah, it was crazy. But yes, what you're saying is true. I mean, I'm a witness to that your breathing has changed, and that's a good thing. Glenn, to stay in the present, how do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and fear of future scenarios?
Oh, I still do this. When situations come up or thoughts come in, I just make myself aware of them. I'm always aware, okay, this thought's come up. Now I ask myself, how am I going to process this? And
right.
Because sometimes our natural tendency is to just lose it, you know what I mean, and I sort of just say, okay, keep calm. How are you going to process this? And and then I work it out in my head how I'm going to do it, and it seems to work.
Yeah.
It just
Glenn, would you say it's kind of an acknowledging of the thoughts?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much that awareness, acknowledgement is really key. If you just let them come and you react on autopilot, as you used the example, it really gets you where it just gets you contained in the same pattern that you've been using forever. But if you want to change it, you've got to practice to get out of it.
Right.
And that's how I practice all the time. Because none of this is, as we said, is easy. It's constant. Because our minds tend to want to do something, and you've got to say no, that doesn't work. Now there's like if someone does something to you, you get the thought, well, they're a bastard. I want to tell them off. Then I'll say, well, how do I process that? And think, well, if I say that, what good does it do? How does it help me by my being abusive to somebody?
Right.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't help my calm.
No.
So I try to figure what's the strategy I can use to remain authentic and calm at the same time.
Right.
That sort of processing thought.
Sure.
And you work it out.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
I'm going to get to Marisa in a minute, but Bobby has mentioned something I want to address real quick because it's beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Bobby. Bobby says, there's no point in worrying because my rent is late, but if I don't worry about it, I'll need to worry about finding a new place to live. I mean, everything would have to be perfect to not worry. And then she adds down a little bit, worrying inspires action. If you're not worried about something, why would you make any actions toward resolving issues? Thank you, Bobby, for both of those comments. And I understand exactly what you're asking. So for me, rent still has to be paid. And as I mentioned earlier, we have to participate. I've never had someone knock on my door and hand me a check. It's just never happened. And I don't expect that it is going to happen. So I know that something has to be done. But for me, the worrying part doesn't help rent to get paid. So what I'm saying is being in a place of worry. I mean, for you, maybe it does inspire action. Yeah, I mean, there's a point to be made for that. And maybe it is worry that inspires action. For me, it's more I know rent has to be paid, so I don't need the worry to inspire me for action. I'm just gonna do as much action as I can. And sometimes I do everything I can do, and we still don't make it. So we do extra stuff. Like I have a side job, and for the past 6 weeks, I haven't had a project during this really hard time. Where before it seemed like whenever we were in a tight spot, I just happened to get a project right before rent was due. And this time it didn't happen. So this time someone helped us, and we didn't ask for it. That's how it resolved itself. But that me deciding not to worry about it helped me to remain calm, even though it didn't change the situation. Rent still had to be due. So for me, it's just not being in a place of the worry doesn't help anything for me. Now, maybe Bobby, for you, it does. Bobby says worrying can also cause you to help others. If my sister were to, my icon thing is, I'll have to, here, I'm going to put something so I can see it. There we go. The little icon thing on the side of the chat was blocking the word. I couldn't see it. If my sister were to pass, I would worry about her boys. Therefore, I would reach out to them more, etc. I mean, to me, that's just love. I mean, yeah, I get you're worried about how they're going to make it and stuff like that. I get that. But to me, it's more love than anything. But, it is whatever it is to you, Bobby. You know me. I'm not trying to tell you what it should be for you. Yeah. Marisa, to stay in the present, how do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and fear of future scenarios? What do you say?
Wow, that's quite a mouthful. Say that again.
Sure. To stay in the present, how do you think a mindset can be altered from the effects of the past and fear of future scenarios?
Well, not being in bondage to fear would
Right.
certainly help. Learning from past mistakes would certainly help. And just having the courage to move forward and to not be afraid to make those mistakes and to realize that making mistakes happens to everybody. And it's part of our learning process.
Sure.
And it's necessary for our growth.
Great answer.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And those are things to think about while we're trying to clear our mind. We can focus on things that we've learned.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I try to do. So
Lovely. Thank you. Is it just about the practice of relinquishing anxiety, or does it become a new way of viewing one's individual world, or both, maybe? So for me, I hate anxiety. I hate it. I hate the way it feels. I hate that it feels like it pulls me a little bit out of the present, as Jenn was alluding to earlier. I don't like it. I don't like anything about it, and I don't want to live like that. And in the past, I would have said, well, yeah, it's fine to say don't worry. It's fine for the Bible to say don't worry, but sometimes people are under a lot of pressure. How does that even look for them to be overcome with all this stuff, whether it's health issues or, I mean, the other thing is, Bobby mentioned if someone dies, people die. We've lost people that we love. Back in 2017, 2018, I lost 3 very important people: my grandfather, my grandmother, and my mother, all within a year. That's hard. things happen. Things happen in the world. How do we not have anxiety about some of that? Um, so for me, it is learning how to relinquish the anxiety, but also for me, it's not guilting and shaming myself that I'm feeling in the first place. Get a lot of that from Christianity, where not everyone, of course, but there are people that shame people for worrying at all. It's like, well, Jesus said, "Don't worry." Well, yeah, he did, but it's also the human experience sometimes, and it's more than just reading a Bible verse for some people, and to help them stop worrying. Yes, trusting God is important, and a lot of times that can help. But again, I feel like God wants us to participate. He doesn't want us to stay in a worry place, but sometimes it takes having tools to help us get there, and the tools may be different for each person.
Yeah.
So for me, it is both. It becomes a new way when you're practicing tools to alleviate anxiety. It is relinquishing it. It's also allowing it to pass over you and not letting it define you. I've found a lot of peace in that. And it's using tools to help you deal with it and eventually get to the point, like I was saying, the weekend that we did my friends thing, where realistically it should have been that I had more anxiety and more worry because we were further away from where we needed to be to pay rent than we had been in a long time. So it would have made sense to me to have greater anxiety during that period of time, but I didn't. I mean, I'm not saying it was zero. I had moments where it would come up, and I would remind myself internally that, okay, I don't have any control over this, but I can control allowing myself to be in an anxiety place, and it would go away. It was amazing. So for me, it's both. What do you say, Jen?
Read it one more time.
Sure. Is it just about the practice of relinquishing anxiety, or does it become a new way of viewing one's individual world, or both?
I think both. I think there's steps for each person on how they relinquish. I think it's a lot more complex than just relinquishing control. And like you had said, I think it's different for each person.
Yeah.
I think there's been times in my past where I'm like, I'll tell myself, in a sense, relinquish control, thinking that that's going to do it.
Right.
Why isn't it working? It's
I love
just
it.
saying some words,
Yeah.
So having some wonderful tools now has just been life changing for me.
Yeah. Sure.
So yeah, and participating
Right. Participating.
in it. Yep.
Yep. Thank you. Marisa, is it just about the practice of relinquishing anxiety, or does it become a new way of viewing one's individual world, or both?
I think it's a lifestyle choice, really. You can either, as a Christian, you can either trust God and let Him handle things. And, I have a problem letting go of stuff. I want to hang on to that and worry about this and hang on to that. But
Not just you.
not just me, but it really, I have to make that choice every day. I can either ruminate, bitch, complain, you name it, or I can truly give it up in prayer to God. Let go of it and let God do what He's going to do. You can't do both. You can't do both. I don't know how to do both. So,
Right.
and that's just one of my things that I struggle with in my walk. I've got to just work on letting go of things that are not my control, don't
Yeah.
need to be in my control,
Right.
and do zero good ruminating, worrying, complaining about it. So
Right. Thank you, Marisa. Great answer. Glenn, you're last on this one. Is it just about the practice of relinquishing anxiety, or does it become a new way of viewing one's individual world, or both?
I think that the more that these concepts are adopted and your view of the world starts to amend, I think there's a lot of this becomes almost autopilot. I think the relinquishment of anxiety tends to just follow the whole process rather than be part of it.
Right.
I'm just trying to think it out, but the process, it just feels like so much falls by the wayside as you developmentally get to a new place.
Yeah.
Although you're aware of it and you know that you're practicing a whole lot of stuff, I think you sort of get to a place where, oh my goodness, like you don't really recognise it as such as you're going through it. It's only when you sort of get down the road you think, oh my goodness, I didn't realise that a lot of my anxiety has faded.
Yeah.
It's just sort of a bit weird. So
Yeah.
I think so. I tend to go with the second one as the first one rather than both.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Next one. Why we've got two more. Well, there's a third one. We may get to it. What do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is key to a calm mind? Why do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is key to a calm mind? I'll be real quick on this one. I feel like acknowledgement is extremely important. I mean, I do have trouble with this whole thing of emptying your mind because my mind is always on, it seems like. And I don't feel like it's of any value to me personally just to pretend like what I'm going through doesn't exist. So the thoughts are there. Now, some thoughts in the past, I would have a thought that I didn't like being in traffic and wanting to throttle someone. I don't like thinking that. I don't like the thought. So a lot of times I would just say, okay, that's not something I want to focus on, and it would go. People have thoughts cross their mind. It doesn't mean that we have to engage in all the thoughts, but when thoughts keep coming back, sometimes I feel like there's a reason why the thought is coming back. Now, if it's worry or anxiety, if it's worrying about the future, now I'm having better tools of how to deal with that. But I have to acknowledge that, okay, this is a thought I'm having. This is something I'm experiencing. This is a feeling I'm having. So accepting that and acknowledging that for me is the first step of reaching a calm place, accepting that this is a thought I'm dealing with. This is a situation I'm dealing with. And how do I get through it? Acknowledgement and accepting it leads me to get to the place of then being able to deal with it and have a calm mind. What do you say, Jenn, to that one? Why do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is key to a calm mind? Why do you think?
I think it's good to separate ourselves from them because I used to identify with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and just to explain a little further, when I would have like a dread thought, like a feeling, sometimes the feeling would pop up first and then it would kick off the thoughts. Sometimes I'd have a thought pop up and then would kick up the dread. So, in having a physical body reaction from these things, in a way, it felt like it was actually happening. So then the mind thinks, well, if my body's reacting to a thought or a feeling, then it's probably going to happen because it feels very real. So repeat the question again, just to set my mind back on what I was going to say.
Absolutely. Why do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is key to a calm mind?
Yeah. So I've, as I mentioned before, I tried, suppressing, just ignoring. It would come back stronger. So acknowledging, I think is definitely key. I'm still figuring out what exactly that looks like for me. But there is a distancing to it. It's not identifying with it like this is me or this is going to happen. It's a thought that's in my mind. It's just a thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big part of it, of the distancing and looking at it and recognizing that it's not you. It's not reality right now in the present.
Right.
It's just a thought. So it does bring about some peace when you take the time to do that, at least for me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Marisa, why do you think that acknowledgement and acceptance of thoughts is key to a calm mind, or do you think that that's the case?
I think um, you've got to accept that you can't control everything, and we're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of, at least my anxiety had come from, just speaking for me. Um, but and I'm reminded of what Glenn says. We can't control everything. We've got to just take things as they come. And and for those of us that are following Jesus, what else can we do but say, "Help me, Lord," each day, each moment. God only knows what's next, you know, and He'll get us through whatever comes. But I think the only thing I can add is this life is tests, trials, um, things to worry about, or things to just give up to God Almighty and trust that He will handle them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's important to not get lost in the bumps in the road and
Sure.
the experiences. And I
Sure.
think that's where sometimes I've had problems, where
Mm-hmm.
I've been so concerned about, hey, this is such a bumpy ride, that it didn't occur to me that maybe there's something I could be learning from
Yeah.
this ride and not just complaining about how bumpy it is.
Right. Right.
So that's about all I can say right now tonight.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Glenn. Last, your last up on why do you
Yeah,
think that?
mine will be short.
Okay.
Since when has denial of our thoughts ever led anyone to a calm place?
Oh, good one. Yeah, it hasn't helped
To
me. Denying doesn't help.
Nope.
That was short. Thank you. All right. Why do you think holding thoughts is a barrier to a calm mind? I'll be short
Why
on
do you
that.
think what?
Why do you think holding thoughts is a barrier to a calm mind? Do you want to answer first?
Sure.
All right.
So when I think of holding thoughts, I think of ruminating.
Yeah.
Because with me, the ruminating or running down the hallways of the future, it's an attempt to have control.
Mm,
I don't have control over what happened in the past. So
right.
why am I spinning my wheels trying? What am I thinking? Like by thinking about it a million times a day, it's actually going to change the past.
Yeah.
Or the same could be said of the future,
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my short answer.
Beautiful. Well, I'm not even gonna. That's perfect. I can't improve on that. Glenn.
holding thoughts inhibits the possibility of new ones coming.
Oh,
Ooh,
well, there's an
nice.
addition. Lovely. Marisa, why do you think holding thoughts is a barrier to a calm mind?
I agree with what Glenn said, and if I can only add, sometimes we think we have more control over things than what we actually do,
Yeah.
and sometimes things are used as a distraction
Yeah.
to keep us spinning
Ooh,
our wheels
Mm,
yep.
instead of making progress.
lovely. Lovely, lovely. All right, great answers. All right, peace can only be found by being present, and the attempts at denial are worthless efforts. You learn to sync the thoughts that embrace your inner peace and let go of the ones that hinder you. Regardless, thoughts are fleeting. The true essence of emptiness lies not in the absence of thoughts, but in the awareness that is beyond them. Key is finding the stillness within the turbulence, which in effect means that even within the storm on one level, there will be another deeper level where one still has inner calm. And I'm going to use Maurice's example from Scripture, which is a really good one, and some people responded in the chat to that one too about Jesus being relaxed in the boat. And I asked her a question, and her answer was good. That he trusted his father. Yeah, absolutely, I buy that. I also think that because of his awareness of who he was and the ability to tell the storm to be calm, why would he need to worry about anything? I mean, he wasn't worried about the outcome at all. He knew that he had the power to control it. So again, we're not gods, but when we use the tools to bring ourselves to a calm place, we in essence can have the storm around us and sleep peacefully, because it doesn't affect us in the same way it does if we're holding on to thoughts and holding on to anxiety and thinking we can change things when we can't. Sometimes it's just acceptance, in my opinion. Um, so that all having been said, the last question for tonight is: does it make sense that we can exist on multiple levels, and how do you think that might work in relation to maintaining inner peace and calm? I'll say briefly, we are complex creatures. We really are, and um, some of this stuff is difficult because we are complex. If we were just mindless robots, we would be programmed to just react the way that God wanted us to react. But He, in His infinite wisdom, He chose to make us these complex beings. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we learn from parents and governments and books and all the stuff that is thrown at us as we grow. And we have all these multiple levels. We have all these inner workings inside us: body, mind, spirit, soul, whatever terms you want to use for it, or whatever you believe the case may be. I believe that we're spirits in a physical body, living an experience that there's a purpose for, and it is. We see through a glass darkly. I think there's a lot more to us than what they allow us to know in this world. That's just my opinion. I think there's a lot of evidence to support that. They hide a lot of our capabilities from us, and they cover things over with truth mixed in lies. I have found that you can find truth by being open to it, and things are revealed to you. I believe the Holy Spirit reveals things to you when you're ready to listen, and that's been the case for me. But yeah, there are so many levels in me of things to unwind and unpack, and I realize it's going to take time, but I've made a lot of progress in what I would consider a short period of time, and I'm grateful for that. And living in gratitude, being authentic, being introspective, not trying to control things, learning how to breathe, learning how to not transpose or project onto the future things that have happened to me in the past, and trying to just take things as they come, has been greatly effective in my life, and maintaining inner peace and calm. It does work hand in hand with that, in my opinion. So yes, we can exist on multiple levels, and it works by using the tools that you learn. And for me, it's using tools that I learned from the Bible, using things outside the Bible, books that my mom had me read. Psychology and sociology has been a huge impact on me, and I think it's priceless, some of the things I've learned from that, and it's helped make my mind work in the way that it does, and I'm grateful for that. Jenn, what do you think? Does it make sense that we can exist on multiple levels, and how do you think that might work in relation to maintaining inner peace and calm?
I'm kind of confused on the multiple levels. What do you mean by that?
Well, I described it as just being complex people. We have many different. It's like IFS. I mean, we have many different parts and dynamics: the mind, the soul, the heart. We have all these, the inner voice,
Yeah.
all the parts and pieces of who we are as a person. But Glenn, if I'm getting this question wrong, please clarify for Jenn.
Well, perhaps if I give you my personal example, then you'll understand better what I'm speaking about.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, sure. Okay, I tweaked to this a long time ago, that I was actually operating on more than one level. And to keep it simple, let's say two levels. And I'll give you an example. One is the really deep level where I retain that essence of peace and calm, and it just doesn't. It's very stationary, sort of. It doesn't get affected pretty much by anything. The second one is more a superficial level where you're more up and down, and you're more prone to the inputs and outputs of everyday living. And the example is like, okay, as I've mentioned before, Sandra flooded the house a few times by leaving the tap on and then having something in your sink and all the rooms got flooded. Now, So I'm in the process of giving Sandra this huge mouthful, right, and doing the cruet, like yeah, you can imagine, and it's pretty. Put the paint coming off the walls, but at the
Right.
same time I'm doing it, I'm I'm saying to myself, hey, I'm shooting my face off, but I'm calm. This doesn't make any sense. So I'm not upset at that deeper level. It's sort of resonating in
Oh,
some place, but
okay.
the external part of me's done the cruet,
Right.
and sort of within a minute you've got it out of your system, and then you revert so quickly to that inner calm place. You don't carry it. Once you stop, it just like the calm comes up again to the surface. You're not angry. You're not carrying it. You're not sort of stewing in your own juice for the rest of the afternoon. It just all gets said, done, in the moment, and then so quickly you've moved on, and everything's just back to that chill state. It's
That's
quite
interesting.
incredible how it works. I became really aware of it just over the years. Of, like I'm actually existing at that deeper level, calm, but I'm certainly superficial level is there, and I sometimes need to shoot my face off
Yeah.
because it's a pressure release, but it's not personal.
Right.
If you get what I mean, it's not meant to be some sort of retribution or
Right.
you just say what you got to say, and then revert to your sort of natural state, which is calm.
Right.
It's quite fantastic, really.
It is fantastic,
You
and it
don't go to
sounds
bed thinking, oh, stewing in your own juice and
right.
angry. No, you don't. There's none of that at all.
Right.
It just works beautifully. So
It sounds
works,
insane.
it works for me, I tell you.
It sounds insane, though. I
Sounds
mean,
lovely.
I'm joking, but it sounds so. When you were talking about that, the thought that kept coming to my mind is the calm level. In order to react like that, the calm level has to exist inside you in order to revert back to it after the short period of saying what you need to say, right?
It's
Yeah.
like, and I know I'm asking myself, well, do I need to say this? And sometimes I answer, yes, I need to get this out, and I need to do it with a few four-letter words and get stuck in.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but that's how you do it. It works. It seriously does work.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Can you answer now, Jen? So
Yeah,
make
I do think I do think it's possible for us to operate on different levels.
Yeah.
I'm still
Okay.
learning how to do that, but yeah, for sure.
Sure. Marisa, last one.
We are complex, aren't we?
Yeah.
But we're made that way on purpose.
Agreed.
And I don't believe that we're made that way to be floating around in a state of confusion
No.
or chaos. Everything works together in a rhythm, in a system, in a pattern, and I think when we see the effects of how good we feel physically, especially after we forgive somebody, after we run our mouth, shoot our mouth off, whatever it is we need to do, and there is a release. And I really believe that is part of what helps us maintain, at least on some level, our physical well-being. You know, we've got to let the pressure valve release,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, I think there's a function. I think these things interact with each other. The spiritual affects the physical affects so on and so on.
Yeah.
A little bit much to get into now, but
Yeah.
I think that is definitely how we're designed
Mm-hmm.
to live that multi-layered existence. That could be a whole other show right there.
Sure.
But anyway, there you go.
Thank you, Marisa. I appreciate your answers. Thank you for responding in the way that you did. Next week, we reverse engineer the topic of God, religion, and other spiritual matters, first identifying those things which are contradiction with a calm and peaceful mindset, and then seeing what remains. I have the thought that there are surprises in store. We shall see. And then we end with a quote: say no without guilt, say yes without fear. Our friend Paulo Coelho. There we go. We ran a little bit late. We intended to just do the 2 hours, but I wanted to finish up so that we could move on to the other topic, which I'm very excited about. And I appreciate everyone that hung in with us for the duration. Thank you, guys. We had a couple of people we hadn't seen in a while. We're glad that you're glad that you came by, and if you're listening to the playback, thank you for taking the time to listen. We appreciate you very much. Please. Think about coming in the chat and just saying hi. You don't have to stay the whole time if you don't want to, if you're able to do that. But we do appreciate, we know that more people listen after the fact than actually hang out in the chat. But we appreciate you too. Thank you. Also, if you have any future ideas for TSL, if you'd like to be a guest on TSL, or if you'd like to do a write-up for us and have that be a part of one of the broadcasts, we invite you to do so. All the above. So you can comment in the chat. You can comment on one of the videos. You can send us an email. My email is truestorylive.crips. That's CRIPPS @gmail.com. Marisa will, if she hasn't done it already, I'm sure she'll feel free to, there it is, post her email in there. Email her. Jen's email is fleeing2fables@hotmail.com. And Glenn, if you want to post your email in there, please feel free to do so. We'll continue next week with part 3. Glenn's going to be doing that right up as well. We will continue. We'll talk about how it worked for 7:30. We did run long tonight, and Jenn had to go, so I'll say goodnight for her, and I'll say goodnight too. See you guys next week. Hope everyone has a great week. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Thank you. And thank you for Glenn for putting all the thought and time into the write-up tonight. Glenn, take a minute and say goodbye to the people, please.
I shall say good night, and I'll report back to you what Sandra thought, and I will not use any colourful language.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
I was interested. I really appreciate the chat. There's some good stuff came out of that. It was really good reading, so thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you, guys. And Marisa, if you could do us the favor that you always do and close us down and say goodbye to the people, please.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Glenn, for another wonderful write-up and good discussion with everybody. Thank you, everybody who's participated. And thank you, everyone who catches the replay. And if you would take a moment, please share the stream out on your social media if you're so inclined. And do remember that life is worth living. If you or somebody you know is needing some help, needs someone to talk to, tell them or tell yourself to call or text 988. That's the suicide prevention hotline. There's always somebody out there to talk to, so don't ever feel like there isn't. All right, looking forward to having a great week. I hope you guys do too, and God willing, we'll see you next Sunday, right here on True Story Live. Good night and God bless.